I wasn't planning to do a video this week, but I had the privilege of seeing Mandy on the big screen for the first time, and I wanted to jump on and talk a little bit about it because it meant a lot to me.
Panos Cosmatos wrote and directed the film, which was released in 2018. The story follows Red Miller and Mandy Bloom and their isolated and idyllic life buried within the forest of the Shadow Mountains in the 1980s. Mandy is shown to be thoughtful, curious, reserved, and empathetic, with an innocent vulnerability born of childhood trauma. She spends her days painting, reading, and working at a local general store. As a couple, they talk about planets and the universe while also enjoying the nature around them.
Saturn, probably.
Yeah, Saturn's pretty cool. And that was one of the first ones that we discovered.
While her trauma isn't explicitly stated, Mandy has a visible scar below one eye, and she admits to her husband that her father once coerced a group of her childhood friends to beat a bag of baby starlings to death. Mandy had run away when it was her turn. A local cult leader becomes obsessed with Mandy after seeing her walking along the road, and his loyal followers enlist a local biker gang, Monstrous, after partaking of tainted drugs, to kidnap Mandy in exchange for the sacrifice of one of their cult members. Mandy is drugged and cult leader Jeremiah tries to seduce her, but even in her drugged state, Mandy refuses and even laughs at him, causing him to become enraged. The cult members then barbarically take Mandy's life in front of her husband, Red. After suffering an intense mental breakdown following everything he has witnessed, Red then prepares himself for revenge.
Look at me. For a while now, word's been coming down from the big rig, something dark and fearsome out there.
Through his connections, he finds both the gang and the cult compound, where we see him successfully avenge Mandy's death one by one, with satisfyingly gory precision. Once he has completed his mission, he drives away to places unknown. As some of you know, I grew up in a cult. It wasn't like this one, it wasn't as overtly violent and dangerous, but it was passive-aggressive, and it caused me a lot of harm. There's a lot of discourse online stating there are too many horror movies with grief and trauma as their themes, but these are universal themes that too many of us understand intimately, and a counter-argument can be made. Horror movies often evoke strong emotional responses ranging from fear and anxiety to relief and exhilaration. This emotional roller coaster can serve as a form of catharsis, helping individuals process complex emotions associated with their trauma. Research suggests that horror fans may use this genre as a way to confront their fears and anxieties in a safe and manageable way, which can lead to a sense of mastery over these emotions.
A good and ethical storyteller will know what devices to use so that you can still enjoy that film without delving further into your trauma and grief.
Panos combines visual, audio, and storytelling elements in a way that is not only ethereal and bombastic, but also told carefully through deliberate filmmaking choices, giving the audience both style and substance. Style at its best increases not only our pleasure, but also our belief in the character's reality. Panos carefully walks a tightrope of having the audience buy into the awful realities of what is happening to the characters, while also removing the audience somewhat by making the reality otherworldly, as if we are watching people from a slightly different, alternate dimension. The target of foreshadowing is always the audience. It is used as a vehicle that provides clues to signal to the reader about events that will occur later in the narrative. Foreshadowing serves to build suspense. This specific literary device gives the audience clues to the future without revealing the plotline. Through the use of the device, the audience is given indications beforehand about what is going to happen later in the story. I argue that foreshadowing when dealing with grief and trauma can also be an ethical choice in preparing the audience. We see Mandy shot through flames while still alive and well, her crying over an innocent and heavenly looking animal found dead in the woods, and the story already mentioned about the baby starlings being held in a bag, before being viciously murdered at the hands of her friends, who followed commands to kill the innocent creatures. All these elements, the fire, an innocent victim, an enclosed bag, are present when Mandy is eventually killed. If these horrific events came as a surprise, I believe the audience wouldn't be able to internalize the themes in a positive way. A central aspect of filmic representations lies in the motivation for audience to create bonds with fictive others. When films are watched in theatres, a parasocial bond between viewers and characters is established and experienced, as well as a social bond between viewers, with the background feeling of a shared experience. Central to the film experience, one that expands language-based storytelling with its added audio-visual dimensions, is the portrayal of the lives of other human beings in such a fashion that viewers are invited to share their cognition, emotions, goals, situations, and social environments. The intense scenes in Mandy, prepared through foreshadowing, can also speak to a deeper symbolic message of how trauma and grief realistically work for people. Neither grief nor trauma just go away, no matter how much toxic positivity one might face from their peers. And as an audience, we can learn to empathise, rather than brush off people's very real experiences and how they may manifest as we continue living those realities. Viewed in an entirely symbolic lens, the story could be Red and Mandy coming to terms with Mandy's trauma as a loving couple, and the revenge plot in the second half of the film could then be seen as Mandy finally having someone willing to love and protect her in ways she never has been before, and the catharsis that can bring. That said, the revenge plot in a literal sense can be cathartic in another way. As a trauma survivor, I've got to tell you, seeing Nick Cage take revenge on these horrible people who are akin to the horrible people I experienced, that's kind of healing. The second Nick Cage takes that white substance and decides to go fully Cage on these people, I was excited, I was happy. Cathartic works are especially good at tapping into repressed emotions, that is, emotions that a reader or audience member may not typically allow themselves to feel. For instance, a person may be disinclined to cry over their feelings of grief because ignoring their pain makes it feel more manageable. But if that person watches a character in a film break into tears at a funeral, they may find themselves unexpectedly moved to tears. As an aside, I also want to commend the film for its representation of cults, and how cults weaponize things like emotion, love, and a desire to belong through brainwashing and control. I'll just touch briefly on some points, as that's a whole other topic. In one scene, the cult leader gives one of his followers a device that harms you. He tells Nick Cage that while he has a lot of love with his partner, there is nothing like the love that this woman has for him. He pushes her to the ground and gets her to hold it up to her temple. Fortunately for this woman, nothing happens. But let's all agree here, obedience is not love. Like her, I felt like I was brainwashed into obedience, into doing what others wanted and not getting to know who I am or what I want.
They were bikers and gnarly psychos and...
That's not to say this character didn't cause some harm, but the fact that Nick Cage lets her go, I think is important. She's going to have to still live with her trauma too. She's not getting off light here. But Nick Cage's character recognises that she is also a victim who did not take joy or delight in harming Mandy. If Mandy does sound too gory for you, I could suggest another Nicolas Cage movie that works really well with the topic of trauma and grief. In the movie Pig, Nick's character also takes revenge, but it's not violent revenge. It's very clever and very different, and I suggest watching it. I know some people were actually disappointed in Pig because they were hoping it would be a bit more like Mandy, but I think it's good that stories are told in a bunch of different ways. Thank you, lovers and friends, for joining me today. Bye.